Welcome to another spirit study at the Cardboard Crash Course. My name is Ethan, and this is the Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. This is a spirit from Spirit Island that was introduced in the Horizons of Spirit Island game. So Horizons of Spirit Island wasn't exactly an expansion, it was more like a different entry point for those who just wanted an easier to understand, lesser produced version of Spirit Island. Now, the spirits introduced in that were 5 spirits of super low complexity. You'll notice here that the Fathomless Mud of the Swamp has no complexity rating. I like to say that to my new players that I'm teaching that is because this cannot get easier. Now, that's not entirely true. This technically has an invisible low complexity rating, but that's just kind of understood. You also have a reminder and setup that you start with 4 unique power cards and 0 energy. Another great little thing for new players that's a great thing to remind them of. So the playstyle of the Fathomless Mud of the Swamp is that it likes having sacred sites where the invaders will build. It basically provides no clear foundation for them. It does ooze outwards, so it has to recreate those sacred sites at some points, and in smaller games it might be able to cut off the most inland lands from explore actions by destroying all of them and stopping new ones from being built. It's a little bit of a fear spirit, but I honestly think this is the most balanced spirit in the game. Now, looking at each of these individually, they do look low, and it seems like this spirit might not have much going on, but the fact that it's really well-rounded is actually a major boon in a game that has a lot of RNG like this one. So, where do your presents start? We're going to have a sacred site started from the very beginning, as we're going to put 2 presents on our starting board in the lowest number wetland, as shown on screen here. Alright, so usually I like to start with the special rules, and this is great because it only has 1 special rule and 1 innate power. We'll talk about growth options and presents, as well as all the powers and all of his cards in just a moment, but the special rule is offer no firm foundations. This says, at your sacred sites, build actions at explorers instead of towns or cities. So normally, whenever you would build, you build a town unless there's more towns than cities, in which case you build a city. This is no matter what, it's just going to skip all of that and build just a tiny little explorer instead. Not much to worry about, and definitely something that a damage here might be able to take care of. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's look at his growth options. So, like normal, we have 3 different growth options, and you pick one of them each turn as the first thing you do during the spirit phase. You can either reclaim cards and add a presence at range 0, which remember takes it off of either presence track, or you can add a presence at range 1 and then add a presence up to range 1, so, you guessed it, you can instantly make another sacred site. Or finally, you can gain a power card, add a presence, and gain 2 energy. So no matter what, you're going to be placing presence with this spirit. Now you might think having an add presence on each step is going to be more complex for a spirit like this, but actually the second growth option is going to unlock so much consistency with him. Once again, just like we took a look at all of the consistent power balance on the back, this is just a consistent way of triggering this special rule. Absolutely phenomenal, and definitely makes him one of my top candidates when I want to just have a calm, fun game. And definitely a spirit that I'm going to introduce to new players. So, what are on his presence tracks? Starts with 1 energy and 1 card play, but definitely not for long, as you always have a presence add on your growth. He goes all the way up to 5 energy in the late game and 4 card plays. Along the way, you get 1 of each element that you're going to need. This is a great way of introducing the idea of elements to the innate powers and to the cards. You're going to get a plant early on, which actually you don't really need until later on, but you will be able to hit some thresholds. You have a water, an earth, and a moon. Now, that being said, just from the first turn, you'll already be able to unlock either both plant and 2 card plays, or 2 energy, or 2 card plays and an earth. That's because this growth option is definitely one you're going to want to take as many times as possible, especially in the first turn. So he's definitely going to have a really high ceiling when it comes to later in the game because of this 4 card plays right here. And if you absolutely need more to do majors, then that 5 energy may be boosted by this 2 energy here. Maybe if you're going a little too fast, you might even want to slow down with this third growth option and gain one of those major power cards. Let's move on to his innate power, Spreading and Dreadful Mire. This is a slow speed at range of 1 from a sacred site specifically, and has to target a land with invaders. So first of all, this is a really simple first one that only has 1 water as a prerequisite, and you move 1 presence from the origin sacred site to the target land. Now there's a reminder here that this is required if you do hit the power threshold and use the power. This is because it works as a way of kind of teaching the player how to move your presence and not just place it, but also that you're going to need to rebuild those sacred sites. Now don't worry too much, because remember, if you have a sacred site that just happens to split into 2 different lands with presence, you can choose your second growth option and simply just make them both back into sacred sites. Definitely a great way to just use this without having to worry about too much downside. So, what's the second one? If you add another water, a moon, and an earth, you're going to generate a fear, deal 1 damage, and push 1 Dahan. You're going to do the same thing if you gain 1 more of each, so that's 2 fear, 2 damage, and push a Dahan, or 2 rather. And then if you gain 1 more of each and 2 plants, which remember you're helped out already on your track for each one of these, you're going to do another 2 damage. So this is 4 damage, pushing 2 Dahan, generating 2 fear, and moving 1 of your presence in there. This can also be a great way to allow your presence to spread across the board and sort of ooze outwards onto other people's boards. Little reminder here that innate powers perform all thresholds reached in order on the same target land. So this is a really consistent way of triggering some of his cards right here, which we're going to take a look at right now. Starting with Open Shifting Waterways. This is a 1 energy slow power that generates a moon, a water, and an animal, and has up to range 1 away from any presence in any target land. You're going to gather 2 Dahan, and if Dahan invaders are present, you'll generate a fear and deal 1 damage. Kind of like what I talked about with a spread of Rampant Green, don't forget that anytime it says 1 damage, it can be boosted to 2 with a Badlands. So this is a great token to use by a Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. The only token I think you should completely avoid is this Disease, because it's already doing what you want to be doing, but every other token is perfectly fine with it. So Open Shifting Waterways is a great way to just move things around, generate some consistent fear, and set up for those Dahan counterattacks. Next up, we have Foul Vapors and Fetid Muck. So this is a 0 energy slow power that generates a fire, an air, a water, and an earth. So this is going towards 2 of the 4 elements that you'll need for your innate. It has to be from a sacred site up to range 2, and the target land has to have invaders in it. Now it generates a fear, which is really great to be consistent about this on all of his power cards, and it also pushes 2 explorers in that land. That's going to be pretty easy to push explorers when all you're creating is explorers in the first place with that special rule. Absolutely phenomenal little engine. Next up, we have Intraceable Thickets and Thorns. It's a little bit more pricey at 2 energy for a fast power. It does have 1 range in targeting any land. It generates all 4 elements that you're going to need, which is great because you're absolutely going to be able to hit this, especially that second one really early on if you're playing Intraceable Thickets and Thorns. It generates a fear, big surprise, and it defends 5. So all of that gathering that you're doing with Open Shifting Waterways and pushing with your innate, you're going to be able to finish that off with the Intraceable Thickets here. And finally, we have Exaltation of Tangled Growth. So 0 cost slow power, and it targets another spirit. It gives you 3 of the 4 elements that you're going to need for your innate power there, just not the moon. But because it's an exaltation, it has a theme that you're going to target someone else, but also get a bonus yourself. When you target that spirit, they may pay 1 energy to gain a power card. And then afterwards, you may pay 2 energy to gain a power card. Just a super consistent way of getting up your deck and grabbing one of those majors that have those thresholds you're going to want later in the game. So this guy is just seeming incredibly consistent at this point, which is a great theme for him. A couple of major powers he might be interested in is first off Tsunami, which has that water and earth. It has a threshold that basically allows you to do a ton of damage to all of the coastal lands. You may have an issue dealing with coastal lands, as you will only have those sacred sites in certain spots, and it's going to destroy some Dahan, but you'll be able to push them out of the way first here. This is a great way of targeting from those sacred sites and finishing off the game. Another major power that he's going to like is Melt Earth into Quicksand. This is from Jagged Earth, and it's a fast power, which is not something that he has a lot of, only one in his deck. It's going to isolate a land, and after invaders or Dahan are moved into the land, destroy them. So you can kind of push those Dahan out of the way, but if you do hit this threshold, you're going to add that Badlands that I was talking about, add a Wilds, which he's going to love, and do some extra damage. This threshold isn't going to be too hard to meet, and even though it's just a sands or wetlands, you're definitely going to want to take advantage of Melt Earth into Quicksand if you come across it. A couple of great options there. So, what do I ultimately think about Fathomless Mud of the Swamp? I think our little seductive otter is going to be absolutely beautiful for new players. This is something that I would push towards a very first player of the game, even if they haven't played a lot of co-op games or huge cognitive load games like Spirit Island before. Horizons of Spirit Island is a great pickup. I'm not sponsored, but I would love to be. If you have any questions about this spirit, the Spirit Study series, or want to see any aspects or other spirits in particular, go ahead and leave comments below or consider becoming a patron. Our patrons have first dibs on all decisions on the channel, and you can go into our Discord and chat with other patrons. So, have a great rest of your day and keep defending that island. Bye-bye now.